G'day there. Today we step into the heart of what makes a true professional. Not just the job title, not the qualification, not the years of experience, but the skills that shape how we show up every single day to work. You see, for me, professional skills are the power behind our presence, the attitude we bring, the clarity in our communication, the confidence in our decisions, and the empathy that strengthens every relationship we build. Professional skills aren't just what we do, they are who we become in the moments that matter. They give us resilience when challenges rises, influence when we need to make an impact, and credibility that people can trust. When these skills grow, so does our ability to lead, inspire, and transform the environments that we work in. Today, it's not just another training session. It's a step towards unlocking the professional strength that already lives within each of us. The wonderful effect of this daily endeavour for most of us, over 40 hours a week, practicing every day, means that it becomes part of our psyche, a part of your character and the energy to your personality that others can rely on, find strength from, and even unbeknown to you, become their role models in a better way to handle life. Welcome to Tradecraft Workshop number 2, Professional Skills. You know, if you were to list all the professional skills and qualities that you bring to the workplace, quite frankly, you'd be asking for a big pay rise, wouldn't you? For the most part, the skill set of a professional is what separates the amateurs from the pros. The ability to demonstrate these skills also defines the distance between each other, as if they're advancing each of us to the top of the leaderboard. You know, some are experts at a few of them, some more gifted with a whole handful, others are naturally open to see the results. And just like any athlete who develops a holistic range of exercise to boost performance, being a champion of these skill sets makes you stand out and ultimately raises your value. You know, I've been privileged to work for a handful of leaders who, what I would call almost natural masters of this skill set. Yet they have taken a step further from mastering these skills in my observation, and they share a common denominator in what I call the 3 quiet talents. So our learning objectives today, we're going to have a look at the 3 quiet talents of a professional, the strengths and rewards of teamwork, a template of how we fit in, understanding how others respond, and this starts from the professional skill set. The first one is obviously communication skills. You know, the ability to speak, listen, write, and present clearly, and tend to speak in terms of clarity, support, and accountability. Because it matters that miscommunication is one of the biggest causes of workplace error, conflict, and wasted time. Clear communicators build trust. They reduce misunderstanding and influence effectively. How many times has a simple thing like a text message been misconstrued, or an email been sent and it's been picked up with the wrong tone inflected in it? For me, communication is obviously the big number one. Now, when we talk about these skill sets, this is the interesting part for me, because for me, they define what makes a great professional great. And it's key to remember that. Number 2 is adaptability, the skill of adjusting quickly to new technology, challenges, and change. It's no small feat when you consider the pressures of daily objectives that you're under, the systemic need for routine, the demands to stay ahead of the competition. You know, when we figure we've got to stay adaptable to anything that changes within our organization, or our perspective, our challenges, because every industry is evolving. Professionals who stay flexible remain relevant. They build natural resilience and they become valuable during uncertainty, and tend to demonstrate an eagerness to learn. They have a quietness of intrigue about themselves rather than wanting to challenge everything. The next one is emotional intelligence. Now, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and recognize those of others. Now, this is an area where a lot of people can have varying opinions. It should be pointed out that there are fields of psychiatry who consider that a journalist who came up with emotional intelligence may not be the best source to consider as a leader in such a science. But I'll leave that door open for you to consider. However, there's a lot to be said for being able, especially under pressure, to remain in control and to be aware of others' emotional position. Because EQ is said to underpin leadership, teamwork, conflict resolution, and client relationships. And high EQ professionals create stronger, healthier work cultures. Number 4 is problem solving, what it is. The ability to analyze issues, think critically, and develop practical solutions. To see barriers and obstacles, interference and the risks as a way of expanding our ability to sell a product, to present a product, our ability to serve, and our ability to conduct ourselves as professional. Because employers can value people who can move from this is the problem to this is the plan, especially in times of pressure or complexity. I'm going to jump to number 6 now. Leadership and influence. Guiding others, taking ownership, inspiring confidence and making decisions, and most of all, setting in place a vision that unites people, unites teams. Because leadership is no longer just a job title specific, is it? Organizations need people at virtually every level who can step up and take initiative and move things forward. And then, of course, we've got time management. Wow, isn't that in itself a science? Organizing tasks, managing workload, and focusing on what matters most. Because with constant demands, professionals who manage time well actually reduce stress. They meet deadlines, they maintain high performance, and they certainly have that energy about themselves that you know that things are getting done. Number 8 is critical thinking, evaluating information, questioning assumptions, and making sound decisions. Because business needs people who can think clearly, avoid bias, and work with evidence, not guesswork or habit. And then, of course, we have digital literacy. How important is that today in the year 2025? The confidence to use modern tools, platforms, and digital communication effectively, because technology is now central to nearly every role. Digital agility increases efficiency, independence, and adaptability as systems evolve. And number 10, professional attitude. Showing reliability, integrity, accountability, and a willingness to learn. Skills can be trained, but attitude cannot. Professionals with strong attitude bring consistency, positivity, and trustworthiness, qualities that teams depend on. Have you figured out what number 5 is? You see, most corporations all look for these top 10 in their leading executives. And what is number 5? What do you think number 5 is? What do you think corporations are most eager to see as a strength in their executive teams? Teamwork. It sits right there in the center. Working effectively with others towards shared goals. Why it matters? Because modern work is interconnected. Teams succeed when people share ideas, they respect differences, and support one another's strengths. Yet there is one question that has to be answered. What makes a great team player? What are the 2 qualities? Consider those, the people that you work with, while we discuss some notable events. I'm a bit of a football fan. And I remember back in 2015, FA Cup round, fourth round of the FA Cup, I should say, Bradford City versus Chelsea. It is said that the game was an astonishing example of teamwork. You see, Bradford were a team whose worth was around about £2 million. And they went up against Chelsea, who were worth at that stage 510 million. And they had some of the best players in Europe. Now, Bradford, a lot of ex-senior players were involved in the team, people that were playing the game at League One level. They weren't what you would call the cream of the crop, But they had one thing about the team that was amazing. They had a real strength of character. They had a strength of purpose, and not only were they a physically strong team, but they really understood how teamwork worked together. It was an amazing game. The Chelsea turned up, and to be frank, they didn't look that pleased running out onto the Bradford ground. Whereas the Bradford City players ran out there with the crowd behind them, and they really had their heads raised high and their tails raised, the way they ran out. And within 20 minutes, the scoreline reflected pretty much what everyone was waiting for, which was 2-0 to Chelsea. But Bradford just didn't give up. They kept going after Chelsea. They kept going forward. They kept getting in there and really having a crack at the team. And they were so supportive of each other. And the end result? Well, they won the game 4-2. It was one of the most stunning victories that we've seen in the FA Cup rounds, you know. So what did Bradford have that Chelsea didn't have? Well, for me, they had enthusiasm and encouragement. Two of the attitude of being a great team player. And that attitude unified into that team spirit. I'll give you another example. Again, forgive forgive the football analogy, but in 1999, Manchester United had a couple of really key players that absolutely disliked each other. They did not like each other at all, from what rumours said. And yet in 1999, when they ran out onto the field, they played their hearts out for each other as true professionals. And what did United win in 1999? They won everything. I mean, they won the top three prizes in football. So you start to discover that great teams in so many forms and with such incredible successes, they all seem to have more than just a skill level. They have this enthusiasm and encouragement that goes beyond being the amateur of what they do at work and becoming part of something professional that's much bigger than the individual. Yeah, if you see where we're coming from, yeah, that enthusiasm and encouragement. I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm not that type of a person." Yeah, we're not talking about what you are as an amateur off the field. We're talking about what you bring to the game in your professional life. I'll let you think about that, because when you start having a look at research of the great teams, I've seen them in even in things like the movies, the TV shows that have lasted for decades, the sports teams that have remained undefeated, businesses and companies with those core key members, you know, and let's not forget YouTube, which is, starting to fill up with people that work so well together and their shows become successful. You know, teams who laugh at problems, encourage each other for solutions, are enthusiastic about the outcomes, even from teasing each other for fun to sharing in the praise of audacious wins. They are all in the stratosphere with audience numbers, and their fan base just keeps on growing. You see, it's people say, well, it's not my personality. Well, I'm not talking about running around hugging everyone. What I'm talking about is what you bring to the professional field. And for me, those handful of CEOs that I've worked with have it in spade: enthusiasm, encouragement. For me, I experienced it with a team of trainers. We were sent out to deliver communication skills to a global company. I did 13 cities in 12 countries in nearly 2 years. There were 10 of us. The support, the enthusiasm, the eagerness to help the other achieve was like being in an elite environment preserved just for your excellence. And with that came an invincibility. And I'm reminded of the great stories from the history of sports where players talk with an almost religious respect of those fabulous achievements, the superhuman characters that brought about stunning victories. So I ask you, as an employer, how much is that worth to you as an employer, having that ingredient? Having that enthusiastic and encouraging person turn up to work with you, how much is that worth to you? And for a client that comes across these types of people with that type of professional attitude, how much does that worth for you? Well, I guarantee that you'll actually pay more for the product because you absolutely become a fan of the companies that are dealing it. Because at the end of the day, it's all about attitude. So when we look at the team, there are consistently four players in the team when we start to break it down. So one of the players is the thinker. Now they're task orientated. They provide technical information and data. They like to do things their way. They could become bogged down in detail and data. They may not see the big picture. They can worry about progress, and these people hate deadlines. They tend to ask a lot of questions. You have to give them time to reflect, give them facts and data to really get involved with. Get to the point when you're dealing with them. They're careful, slow decision makers. They're very conscientious. They're perfectionists. They're accurate. They're disciplined. They're ambitious, highly reserved. They can be completely systematic. They tend to have high standards, and they're very orderly. When you consider that type of makeup, how many people do you have in your team that are like that? And then, of course, you've got the director, very goal directed, sees the vision, the mission, the goal of the teams as paramount, flexible to new ideas. They're a risk taker. They love to direct. They're an organizer. They're confident. They like to be number one, responsible, powerful, fast thinking, ambitious. So, how we work with the director? Well, we help them meet their targets. We present the top and bottom figures. We share agendas to bring up their ideas. And there's nothing better for somebody involved in the team of a director to making their team competitive against other teams. It can really start the ball spinning. Yeah. And then, of course, you've got the socializer. Hello. Enthusiastic, sympathetic, sociable, relationship orientated. They're good at conflict resolution. They're good at giving feedback. They like to see the whole picture. Generous. They can be a little bit dramatic, charismatic. They love to talk. They tell stories with emotion. They tend to see the big ideas. Not much on emails. I'll just throw it out there. They're not much on emails. They much prefer face-to-face talking. And I'm sure when you start having a think about the people that make up your team, there'll be a couple that'll jump straight into that dynamic. And then, of course, finally, we've got the supporter. Helpful, patient, easygoing, deliberate, predictable, low risk, willing to disagree with the leader or higher authority. They're cautious. They most appreciate the value of openness. They can be uncomfortable with change. They're very much a stabilizing influence. They can be very agreeable, engage with them, and talk about what's in it for the team. So the supporter is interesting because the supporter you can see is in contrast to the director. So the directors' types of behavior styles and the supporter types of behaviors, they don't get on with each other. The director tends to think the supporter is not enough focused on what's in it for them. And the supporter tends to think that the director's a little bit too selfish, a little bit too narrow-minded. And then you've got, the charismatic socializer who just doesn't get on with the thinker. The thinker thinks the socializer is too feely. They're too emotional. Whereas you know, whereas that type of person needs facts and figures and logic to control. So I used to think that there was problems. I used to think this person doesn't like me, and I couldn't figure out why. And when I started to understand behaviors and how people can mix nicely in with one behavior and yet find that they're not on the same page as another behavior, things started to become so much easier for me. I started to appreciate people for who they are, not what I'd hoped they would be. Because at the end of the day, great people make people feel great. We spoke about that in the first video, didn't we? The first workshop. You know, with recognition, this is the secret to every successful advertising campaign, that's worked well, making people feel like VIPs. It's the inspiration of a child. How do you bring a child forward? Well, you give them recognition. This is how we choose our friends, how we captured our partner's affections. Recognition for me is singularly the one quality that when we aim for can help us understand the other person and get us to listen more accurately. And then, of course, we've got the critic. Now, the critic is pretty much a modern day profession, isn't it? You've got the movie critic, the financial critic, the sports critic, the literary critic, the theatre and arts critic, the hotel and travel critic. We become specialists at the critic. And for me, I think 9 out of 10 people that you meet, when you suggest an idea to them, they'll come up with a reason why it won't work. If I walk into a board of directors and I got 12 directors there, I can tell you if I come up with a suggestion on where we should go, you'll get at least 10 of them that will sit there and say, well, actually, it won't work because of this. And why is the critic so predominant out there? Why is it that as a professional, we need to cater for that reaction? Because typically their first response is going to find the weakness. Yeah. Now, that's not a bad thing. when it comes to job actions and and objectives, is it? Especially when you're working on financial areas. But have you ever considered how you react to criticism? How it makes you feel? You inspired by it? Does it make you want to try harder? How many of you sitting there listening to this and thinking about the faults that you see in what I'm presenting? Or do you wonder about that wonderful what if? So the critic is one of the areas to be aware of on how we approach it. I remember taking one elderly gentleman out for his birthday. He was in his 70. We had a wonderful evening for his 70th birthday at this great hotel. There was only the five of us there. The waiter was like Jerry Lewis. The wine was great. The food was great. I remember walking me out to the car. Did you enjoy your evening? He said, well, you know what, the air conditioning was a bit cold, wasn't it? Meals were a little slow. I was thinking, out of all the things that you could pick about what a great evening it was, with so much laughter and so much fun, why do that? Well, the essence is it's power. It resolves and gives people power. And however, also to take a note of that is when you look at the way humans have evolved, being critical of our environment, critical of our surroundings was very much a survival thing. So we don't want to not accept it. What we want to do is we want to be prepared for it. So those three quiet talents, understanding that attitude is chosen. What I saw in the greats that I've worked with was this infinite sense of enthusiasm and encouragement. Even when things weren't going according to plan, it became an opportunity to expand and develop even better practices. Recognition. What a quality. How many people out there are absolutely looking for that recognition, and the same with enthusiasm and encouragement. For me, I've seen people just rise to incredible challenges just because of the sheer enthusiasm and encouragement that's been shared with them. And then understanding the critic. So for me, those three quiet talents that go beyond professional skills that I've seen in so many of the greats that I've worked with are those three keys there. And by practicing on them, I think not only do you become a better professional, I think you become a better person. So what we wanted to look at today, the three quiet talents of professional, the strengths and rewards of teamwork, a template of how we fit into the teamwork, and in understanding how others respond. Thank you. I hope this has left you bubbling like champagne.